Hello, guys. Welcome to TACoS Tuesday. We've hit a new milestone, episode number 5. Philip is back with us. How's it going, Phil?
It's going incredible, Trevon. It's so great to be back. I'm so ready. We're halfway through the first decade of episodes, and I can't wait for how much more we have.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about something we kind of mentioned in the first episode, but we're really going to dig deep and get in the weeds. Campaign structure. It's probably the number one thing that a client probably says to us when starting a project. I have all these products. How do I group these together? What campaigns am I going to launch? How do I really start out? So me and Philip are going to break down what does it look like for the small seller that's scaling from maybe 0 to 100 products, and what does that look for the large and massive distributor or conglomerates that are doing 5,000 plus SKUs. So Philip, let's first start with, what does that journey look like for the very small seller? How would you structure their campaigns?
100%. So you have to think of an e-commerce seller and a brand that's just starting as just a person with no shelter. So your end goal is to build the Burj Khalifa, which is millions of dollars on Amazon each year. How do you think the Burj Khalifa was made? With a very, very strong and sound foundation. If you don't have that massive foundation, you aren't going to be able to propel and build hundreds of stories on top of it, because once you put in that second edition, or you start having stuff in the second story and it starts wobbling because you didn't get your step 1, 2, and 3 right. So campaign structure is essential for making sure that you can actually grow the brand and start pouring money into it directly. The way I recommend for all beginner sellers, you have to find a fine line between having as many campaigns as possible so that you can turn each dial to the exact dimension. But also your main structure and the word I would say is obstacle in the beginning is your budget. So you need to find a fine line between how many campaigns can I have that'll give me the best ability to actually fine tune everything, but keep within my budget. Because once you have 1,000 campaigns, it's very hard to spend $1 a day on them because you're not going to see any performance. So for someone who's first starting out, I would recommend getting all your products and grouping them by product lines. Okay, I have 7 types of bathrobes. One's black, blue, red, yellow, and I have 4 pre-workouts and 3 water bottles that I sell. Okay, perfect. Group those up. Now I have 3 groups. What I'd start out with for each of these, and you're just going to lay it like an assembly line, and you just copy paste them over, obviously with your different keywords, but the same structure. I would start with one auto campaign for each of them. This is where we're going to do our harvesting. This is where we're going to find new keywords and make sure that we're being shown in spots that we may not be specifically targeting. You want to think of your auto campaign like it's a blind spot on a car. You don't want to forget about it because it can crash and burn your entire business. So what I'll do after the auto campaign is I will recommend 3 manual campaigns for each brand, for each product line. The first one would be your branded. Obviously, this is where you're going to be putting your brand keywords, your defense actual slots. The second one will be category. This is where you'll be on unbiased keywords such as towel, bathrobe, etc. And then the third would be your competitor manual campaign, which will be your companies and your main competitors' names plus our product name. This is where you want to attack and steal customers from them. Now, within all of those 3 manual campaigns, I would recommend breaking those down into different targets of phrase, exact, and broad. The reason we want to do this is obviously the exact is going to have more searches, more impressions, and a higher cost per click. You don't want to have everything grouped in together, because when you want to initially start tracking metrics like how much does this general product cost for me to advertise on, it's going to be skewed if you're only looking at the exact. You need to be able to give yourself enough fine tuning to make A, good decisions, and B, collect enough data to actually be able to tell the story. Amazon is information overload. And if you aren't breaking it down and setting enough clean, cold lines to make the right decisions, you're going to get lost in the sauce and it's just going to get too much for you. So that's how my initial campaigns would be structured out. Obviously, Trevon, this is the, the textbook guide. This is your bread and butter. This is the essential rules. It helps for a small seller. The only second tip I would say is once you graduate and you say, okay, I have these campaign structures, they're selling well, but some of the products in the product line aren't getting the love that they have. I'm showing up on wrong keywords that I shouldn't be. This is when I would graduate to one parent ASIN for all of these campaigns, rinse, repeat. That's kind of how you want to graduate. from step 1 to step 2. Now, Trevon, step 3 is obviously the most crucial step. You've gone from a small or intermediate seller to enterprise level. This is where if you do one small little shift, it could result in tens of thousands of dollars. You want to imagine like this. When you start off as an Amazon seller, you're on a bike. If you move the handlebar just a little bit, you're just going to sway a centimeter or two. It's not a big deal. But if you're going 300 kilometers per hour in a Formula One car down the Grand Prix and you just bump that steering wheel a little bit, you're going in the wall because every mistake at that level is catastrophic for your business. So, Trevon, you've obviously been doing ads for years. You've handled PPC for some of the largest people in the space. The tips that I said are more or less the foundation and the textbook. But obviously, when you get to that level, there's some nuances that if you just change things by 1 or 2%, that can mean an extra $10,000 in sales. What are some tips or the lay of the land, and how does it change for some of these expert and higher level sellers?
Yeah. Big characteristic, obviously, of those bigger sellers is they have more product to sell. These big conglomerates are selling probably tens of thousands of products, so it's much harder to handle, and it's a lot more. There's a lot more risk involved with the decisions you make. But I'll break it down from the campaign structure level. There's some similarities, but there's more you can do with various products with a larger product size. Let's go into the auto campaign. So obviously, same thing. You want to group your products together based on functionality. But when you're going into the actual bidding and the placements, there's other things that I would do with a larger seller that I wouldn't do with a smaller seller. So let's go into bidding. With bidding with a smaller seller, you would want to probably do dynamic bidding down only. And for those who don't know, that means that Amazon will see a keyword that isn't less likely for you to convert. Say if you're selling a laptop and you see mouse, it's less likely to convert specifically that someone is looking for the exact brand of laptop that you're selling. So Amazon will bid down by a certain percentage to ensure that you're still actually on the page and trying to vie for that sale, but you're not spending the same amount that you would at the cost of a very generic keyword or a keyword that's very similar to yours. What I would do actually for a larger seller is top and down. So Amazon actually has the ability to bid higher at a certain multiplier of keywords that are actually likely to convert for you, as well as for the same functionality as going down for keywords that are less likely. With these bigger brands, you obviously know that you have a much higher conversion rate to work with, and you're more likely to create sales. So you need to be a lot more aggressive and use a lot more actual strategy, and I call it finesse to get to your KPIs or actual goals in sales and ROAS that you actually want. Um, Another thing I use a lot with when I know I have a good product and a strong brand is placements. There's two different types of placements. There's top of search and there's product search. Um, I think we've dug into this before, but 70% of all sales are coming at the top. With these big brands, I would add a multiplier on top of even the top and down for these top of search actual keywords. So in this situation, when I'm running an auto campaign, they're much more advanced. If there's a keyword that's far likely to appear, I'm telling Amazon with my bidding strategy, hey, I want to bid more. This is very likely. And the placement bid is actually, I'm going to add a multiplier on top of that to make sure I appear at the very top. This makes sure I'm getting lots of sales, and I'm doing the most aggressive way possible to ensure that I can maximize everything that we have because we know we're sure about the conversion.
Yeah, and Amazon definitely takes into account in their algorithm when showing these sponsored product slots, sales velocity, number of reviews, and just overall conversion. So you have to be able to play to your strengths. When you're trying to start this private label company, it's going to be harder to get these product slots number one for just laptop. But when you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales per month and you're continually getting sales on that keyword, you're going to benefit off being shown at that, even at a lower bid. But why harm yourself? If you know you're going to convert on that, double, triple down on it and add that multiplier to make sure you're being shown 80% of the day. I completely agree.
Exactly. And then there's the manual campaigns, which is probably the most difficult and daunting part of campaign structure in
It's
general.
make or break right there.
Basically,
Yeah.
it's where everything is organized. Manual campaigns is where we want to laser focus on the keywords that we know are working well, that we've harvested from the auto campaign, and continue to bid on those every single day. There's different ways of how to go about it. Some people like to similarly to the auto campaign, harvest all of your actual products together, keep all of your broad phrase exact within one actual campaign. What I like to do to make sure that I have the absolute most control in doing everything is break out all of my campaigns based on match type. So I run a match type campaign structure. So for every product type, that means I'm going to have four different campaigns at the most basic level. So we have an auto campaign for, say, for selling laptops. I'm going to have a broad campaign for laptops, phrase campaign, exact campaign. Those are four different campaigns broken out by themselves with a product targeting and category targeting as well.
And the issue for these large sellers is if you make one tiny mistake or don't capitalize on one opportunity, it's not one sale; it's 100 sales that you're missing out on. So it's so much more quantified and magnified that you have to make sure you're doing everything incredible. For these small sellers, if you group everything into one campaign, there might be two or three keywords that are heroes that aren't getting the love they need, and oh shucks, we lost 4 sales this month. It's not the biggest deal. You won't feel as much as a loss, and the brand itself won't notice it, so it's not that crazy. When we go to these people who are making millions each year on Amazon, if you're making these stakes on the campaign structure, there's not 3 keywords that you lost that aren't getting the love in the campaign. There's hundreds, and that's turning into an extra $500,000 in sales. So you need to make sure that everything is built out, cut perfectly, has its ability to grow, and has the respective budget, or else you're never going to grow.
Exactly. And that by structuring it in a match type sort of way, you're able to see exactly what each particular match type is doing in terms of conversion, ad spend, sales, and it's very easy to make those changes right away. The caveat of this is that you're launching more campaigns. It takes a lot more ability, skill, and knowledge to know exactly what to do. Um, there's different. I would say the major difference between these big sellers and the small sellers is that there's different variations in how to structure your campaign as well. The most generic of this is product lines that have variations. This grouping is very easy to put together. If I'm selling a T-shirt, there's a small, medium, large, XL. What I would do in these actual manual campaigns is have a group for our actual generic keywords. So words like t-shirt, that's very generic. All of my keywords are all of my actual products are vying for this keyword. What I would also do is go into create additional ad groups for all of my variations and then put very specific keywords that are laser targeted towards those variations. So for example, keywords such as large men's t-shirt, that I'm only going to put in my actual large t-shirt variation to make sure that we can see how we're converting towards these very targeted keywords, ensuring that Amazon isn't putting my small t-shirt towards that large keyword, and making sure that we understand conversion, ad spend, and continually having a place to harvest and put more keywords into these very specific spots.
Yeah, because for example, if we're advertising for Under Armour, one of the biggest companies in the world, we don't want to be showing a red small hoodie on a keyword that is blue hoodie large. Like those small intricacies and those easy wins right there, with breaking it down of how you said based on those variations, gives you that ability to get as close as you can to one marketing. That's the goal with any type of ads. If we're talking about when things started in the golden era of billboards on Times Square all the way to today, where we're launching DSP campaigns and we're going all across on different platforms, the ability to get as close as you can to one, knowing exactly who your customer is and trying as close as you can to show that exact product to them, that's where you're going to capitalize. And that's where we need to do it on the campaign structure and moving forward.
Yeah. And this does take a lot of work. You're obviously creating one ad group for every single product to making sure that things are very specific.
Oh, we're talking thousands.
Yeah, it's taken me probably lifetime hundreds of hours to do these type of actual campaigns and continual optimization, but you get the best results from doing so, and that's why people come to agencies, because they don't like doing it.
Yeah.
Another actual version of that is, say I have several different products that aren't a variation but across the board. You would do the exact same thing. So if I'm selling bathrobes, for example, we're grouping all of our bathrobes, but there's different functionalities or specific keywords that you want to break out into single ad groups and making sure that they're targeted and continue to churn sales and see their actual conversion. Once going in, you can make those actual adjustments by adding negatives, a phrase, or exact, very specific changes that are only directed towards those particular ad groups to ensure that our conversion is optimized for every single product. Because what in your actual instance, in the very basic level, most people go in and say, "Oh, my campaign is at 40% ACoS. I need to get it to 30. I'm looking at my search term report. This word isn't working for me, so I'm going to put it at the campaign level, a negative targeting. You have now hurt your ability to create a sale for every single product. Whereas if you broke it out to the individual level, I would have known this keyword isn't working for this particular ad group. So I'm going to negate it for this one and keep it open for the rest of them because they're generating sales. And that's how you actually reduce ad spend.
Okay, Trevon. So whether we're a small seller, whether we're a big seller, we just took some of the tips that we gave. We have all of our campaigns built out. Sorry for you that would have thousands, but now we have everything built out. You have your keywords. Where are you starting those bids? Are you just doing $1.50 across the board and praying that it works, or where's your strategy in that? Because just because you have a great campaign structure, you have to still do all the work afterwards to make sure it performs. So on that day zero, how are you starting out on those bids?
So on the manual level, what I would do is open up the search term report. I know this sounds kind of old, but open up the search term report. We're going to look at every single particular word and look at what was the average bid that we were able to generate sales on, what was our conversion on that, and then we're going to place it within their specific ad groups based on that bid range. So if I know that in the auto campaign while I was harvesting, I was at a 10% conversion rate at $1.50. I know that this product is doing really well. We're increasing in our ranking. I might actually add a placement on top of that to get to 220, for example,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're pushing a lot more. Because I know that conversion rate might drop to 8 or 7%, but the actual return in volume makes a lot more sense. So it's real decisions like that on the very micro level, looking at every single keyword, identifying its conversion rate, and then placing the bids, using the bid that you got from the auto campaign as sort of a anchor, and seeing whether you want to go more aggressive in your auto campaign now that you know that's laser targeted, or going down a little bit more because now you've harvested, you are able to eat the ACoS. I'm going to bid a little less aggressively on this keyword, but I know I'm going to still generate sales because I'm targeting it now every day.
Yeah. Like when I launch for a brand, what I'll do is I'll go through their search term report and I'll break everything down by their products. I have a sheet for each of those. I have all of their historical keywords across all their campaigns. Obviously, you're going to look for the high winners, the ones that got majority of the spend, majority of the sales. We're going to plot those down. Hopefully, that's 3 to 5 keywords per product. Then we're going to look at, okay, what are the ones that got maybe 5 or 10 conversions lifetime, didn't get enough love because the campaigns weren't structured well, but they could be home runs. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing those as well, and now I have their historical cost per click. If they're all converting well, just like you said, you put that multiplier on it, bring it a little extra. But then what I'm also doing is I'm checking the average overall for each of these historical CPC to know where I should never drop below. So what I'm making sure is, okay, these 5 keywords that work, their historical CPC is $1.70. We're going to throw that multiplier, get it to the $2 range. And in general, for bathrobe one, its historical CPC is $1.35. So I know if I want to be shown on average, let's stay within that range. And if I don't want something to get as much love or attention, let's start getting below that. Just so you have initial benchmarks. Obviously, once you start advertising and your hands are actually deep in the account, you know through your own experience where these averages are, where these baselines are. You start to get a feel. But when you're starting and you have no of that prior experience in the account, you have to go off the historical lays of the land to get a baseline.
Yeah, it's very technical. Another thing about campaign structure that gets really fun is once you build out that individual level, you're able to see exactly who your best seller is in terms of conversion. A lot of people look at the business reports and say, my unit session percentage is 12% for this product. This is absolutely going to sell. I'm going to start advertising tons. That does make sense, but by individually looking at things, you're able to actually identify what is selling the best through advertising, and then you can break those out into single ASIN campaigns. I love to do that. That same structure from the auto as well as down from the phrase, broad, exacts, product targeting, a category targeting. I do the exact same thing for my best sellers. This makes sure that we're not sharing any spend with the other products that aren't doing any well. We want to push this as aggressively as possible. We want to make sure that we have an auto campaign continually seeing harvesting for keywords like this because we know it's going to generate sales. We're going to add a placement on this. We're going to add we're going to use probably a dynamic top and down bidding strategy to make sure that it pushes as much steam as possible into this actual product, and as well as creating probably a sponsored brand as well, grouping that with some of the other best sellers together with our best keywords and pushing that aggressively as possible.
100%. And the issue is just like you said, if you're a founder, you're just like getting into the account. Let me go through the business reports. Oh my goodness, this has a unit session percentage of 12%. This is selling like hotcakes. That's where you need someone on the ad side or the analytical side to unfortunately tell you the hard truths. Well, no, there were 200 total sessions on the month. You know what I mean? You look into Cerebro, as simple as that, or you go on Helium 10. Oh, 90% of your sales were on one keyword with 20 search volume, for example. That's why your unit session was so high, because it literally said white bathrobe, extra large for women. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you start throwing money at that. Why is nothing converting? You guys are terrible at ads. This has such a historic high session rate of conversion, not at scale. So a lot of people think ads as simple as, okay, well, I've sold 50 doing ads when I was spending $100 a month at a 10 ROAS. Keep burning this money and just make me infinite cash. Your campaigns weren't set up for scale. They were set up for these little tiny wins that had one or two searches a month that were getting you great sales, but it wasn't there to get you to the seven-figure level. That's where we need this campaign structure and this house of historical winners to get you to that next era.
Yeah, by doing this, you won't come up with the wrong answer. You'll get as much data as possible to make the best decisions. Um, Doing it at this level, obviously, like I said, takes a lot of time. But breaking things out individually, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, is the easiest way to make sure that you are maximizing your sale and get to the ROAS that you want. One thing also that I think we forgot to mention is these major sellers and some of these smaller sellers are also trying to structure their sponsored brands. They're probably launching several hundreds and don't know necessarily how the data should be fed to. What would you do in terms of your sponsored brand and your sponsored display initially when structuring them?
100%. So sponsored brand, people think it's so much different, so much scarier. Oh my goodness, like it's a whole different world. Yes and no. At the end of the day, it's ads. You need the same structure. So what I would do with sponsored brand is I would break it just as you need every little bucket, every little nook and cranny for sponsored product. You need that for sponsored brand. If we have the budget, you need the same for branded sponsored brand, competitor sponsored brand, category sponsored brand. Because if you have all of those in just one campaign and you're trying to run your sponsored top headline for your bathrobes or your pre-workouts, and you put a budget of $10 a day, great. Your brand defense took $9 of those dollars, gave you an incredible performance, but you lost out on so many sales. Or on the flip side, oh my goodness, I had a competitor in my sponsored brand campaign and it stole all my money and converted nothing. Screw it. I'm pausing sponsored brand campaigns forever, and you're losing the cash and the spots. That's the number one mistake people think is you're only as good as the data tells you. So if you don't have all of the buckets and have every data point isolated to know when I changed X, it gave me Y, you are not going to be set up for success. So I would break it down each way so that you can have everything good. What I would do for sponsored display, what I typically recommend on a campaign structure is there's three initial sponsored display types I would want to run. Number one is the brand defense. This is your bread and butter. If you aren't running defense on your sponsored product, sponsored brand, and sponsored display, you are just quite literally giving yourself an Achilles heel asking for someone to stab you with it. What I would do for sponsored display is put all of your ASINs together in a brand defense actual campaign type. I would leave my budget fairly high, and if you're using an automated software, set your target ACoS extremely high. If you're using the manual console, which is fine, set your CPC extremely high. Obviously, you want these to run. At the end of the day, it's someone looking at your product. It's going to convert better overall, and then letting the risk of someone leaving. What I would recommend outside of that would be your remarketing and your retargeting. So what I would do is I would make an individual remarketing campaign, an individual retargeting campaign for each of these parent ASINs. So for each bathrobe parent ASIN, I'd have one remarketing, I'd have one retargeting, etc. Now, what I would do for your recommended actual bidding and what you would put it at, I would look at for that specific parent ASIN. Now that you have everything built out, I would go to your sponsored product and look at, okay, for these bathrobes, what's my 30-day running CPC? $1.85. Nice. I would put it at a little bit higher to initially launch those, probably $1.90, maybe $1.95, just to make sure you're running. That's kind of the baseline. And then what I would recommend, again, depends on the category. If you're doing supplements, if you're looking at a look back window, I'd probably say 30 days. That's when you want to start rerunning those. If you're running something that's more gadgety or more something that people don't buy as often, I'd up it all the way to 90 days personally.
That makes a lot of sense, and I feel like we could talk about this for hours and hours. I hope this was very insightful for you guys in understanding what ways you can win in terms of structuring your campaign to make sure that you're optimizing and getting as much data as possible, and the differences between the large seller and very advanced strategy to the very small seller and beginner stage in building up your campaigns. We have a series like this on YouTube where we explain sort of the intricacies of Amazon. I'm sure we will have a link in our description.
Thank you so much for watching today's Taco Tuesday. Do not forget to hit that like button, click subscribe, and smash that bell. We are coming in with our episode 5 weekly updates of TACoS Tuesday. We're also running a bunch of other stuff. We have Ship Happens, which is more of our storytelling with our CMO, Blair Forrest. We have actual tutorials on more in-depth parts of Amazon. Is Vendor Central the future? What's the state of 2023 going to look like? And other tips. Make sure to check our channel out and look forward to seeing you soon.